The Bedford County Board of Supervisors to order. I think the first thing we need to do is to officially come out of our previous closed session.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair, and the board has been out of closed session pursuant to a motion made by Mr. Scott, seconded by Supervisor Parker, and unanimous vote to come out of closed session. Whereas the Bedford County Board of Supervisors has convened a closed meeting pursuant to an affirmative recorded vote and in accordance with the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, and whereas Section 2.2-3712 of the Code of Virginia requires a certification by the Bedford County Board of Supervisors that such closed meeting was conducted in conformity with Virginia law. Now, therefore, it be resolved that the Bedford County Board of Supervisors does hereby certify that, to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements by Virginia law were discussed in the closed meeting to which the certification resolution applies, and only such public business matters were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting was heard, discussed, or considered by the Bedford County Board of Supervisors. Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Ms. Bansley?
Yes.
Mr. Sharp?
Yes.
Ms. Parker?
Yes.
Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
So certified.
All right. That moves us back onto our agenda. Just remind everyone, if you've got a cell phone, if you could place that on silence or vibrate. And then we will open up with a moment of silence. Thank you. If you could stand with us for the Pledge of Allegiance. All right. Should have your agendas. Are there any questions regarding the agenda for tonight? If not, I'd entertain a motion for adoption.
So moved.
We got a motion by Mrs. Bansley. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Parker. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. That brings us to our citizen comment period. You'll have 3 minutes. If you have not been with us for a little bit, we've got a clock on the wall now that will begin once you complete your name and your address or voting district. If you have addressed us on another topic in the last 90 days, you need to pick something else to talk about tonight. If we have a public hearing scheduled, and we have a couple this evening, there'll be time there. So if you have anything on the Virginia Institute of Autism, the Valleywood Drive Revenue Sharing Project, the special use permit for James Andrews, there'll be a time later on in the agenda for that. So I have one person signed up for that citizen comment. That's Isaiah Knight.
Look like a married man there.
Yes, I am. Thank you. It's exciting times. Isaiah 9, 215. Jefferson Woods Drive. That's fancy. Pretty simple for today. Talking about the Lynchburg Regional Business Alliance. I've brought this up several times before. What's the joke go? What's classy if you're rich and trashy if you're poor, and that's getting money from the government, right? It's the Lynchburg Regional Business Alliance. You've called me once before, Mr. Sharp. Not happy about me posting about that on Facebook, but as time has gone on, we've had a tax increase here in Bedford County, and again, it's like we should be using every single cent in the best way possible. And we're giving, I think it's $100,000 a year to the Lynchburg Regional Business Alliance. And I want to thank Supervisor Davis for standing up on this. And I think everybody should be listening to him a whole lot more often up here. But one of the things that we're funding on there is the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, which is listed on the Lynchburg Regional Business Alliance page. On this, it's diversity, equality, inclusion, all the things that Lynchburg area businesses should start implementing into their organization. On there is a bunch of links to various organizations, including the 1619 Project, how to develop diversity inclusion initiatives, 97 things white people can do for racial justice, which on the back page, the number one number one thing on the list is the best thing to do is to follow your local Black Lives Matter chapter or other local Black-led organization to find out the proposed policy and funding changes in your city or town. Donate to your local BLM chapter, sign up for updates, volunteer, and take action when asked. To talk about how cold that is in Lynchburg area, ask any business over by 5th and Federal on why that's probably not the best interest of a business owner in this area. In short, I say I have 30 seconds left here. If we keep giving money to these leftist organizations, it's not good. And I hate seeing that our money is being taken from us by force and is given to organizations like this. So I'll pass this around. They did take it off their website after I contacted Councilman Mischins in Lynchburg and a couple of councilors in Appomattox and in Campbell County. But this was up here when we voted to give this organization money. So I guess 5 seconds here is if we could stop funding organizations that are taking our stolen money and giving it to them.
Thank you, Mr. Knight.
Busy?
Mr. Scully, do you mind passing this out to them? Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to share during the citizen comment period tonight? Yes, ma'am.
Megan Johnson, District 7. I just want to say that I concur with what Isaiah Knight said. We should not be giving money to Black Lives Matter. It's not only a leftist organization, but it's a violent organization. And if you would like some of my research on them, I'm happy to provide it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson.
Anyone else like to share this evening? If not, I will close the citizen comment portion of this meeting and move us on to the consent agenda. So, Mr. Hughes, if you would review that with us.
Yes, Mr. Chair, we had four items on the consent agenda this evening. Item A is a resolution approving a $5,000 transfer from the contingency fund for farmers market funding. That's for Moneta Farmers Market and Montvale Farmers Market. Item B is a resolution authorizing the re-advertisement of a request for proposals to redevelop the former Body Camp Elementary facility. Item C is a resolution adopting the updated and revised emergency operations plan, which we had a work session about last meeting. And item D is a proclamation to be jointly declared with the town of Bedford that recognizes the Bedford County Junior Reserve Officer Training Course Program's contributions to the county and town.
Okay. Any questions on the consent agenda?
I got one. The 5,000 for the farmer's market, is that one particular farmer's market of all of them?
The Forest and the Bedford already received $2,500 each for $5,000 total. This is $5,000 total, so it'd be $2,500 to the Moneta Farmers Market and $2,500 to the Montvale. So now all four farmers markets will receive $2,500.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, if there's no more questions, I move we approve the consent agenda.
We have a motion by Mr. Johnson. Is there a second?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to, before Mr. Johnson made that motion, I had a question wanted to ask.
Mr. Johnson, would you let him entertain the question?
Absolutely.
Okay.
This money, this $5,000, where is it, for the money for all of the farmers markets, where does it come from within the county's budget, may I ask?
They'll be housed going forward. I mean, the farm is housed in the Economic Development Office. Economic Development Department budget is where it's located.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion from Mr. Johnson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Davis. This is a roll call vote. Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. Bansley? Yes. Mr. Sharp?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Ms. Parker?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Motion passes. That brings us down to the approval of the minutes from May 22nd, 2023. We've had one correction that's been notated already. Any other questions on the minutes?
motion, we approve the minutes as presented.
All right, we have a motion by Mr. Scott. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Parker. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, motion passes. That moves us down to our public hearing time. Pretty much the same rules during the public hearing as it is for citizen comment period time. You've got 3 minutes to speak for or against that. And the first one up that we've got is consideration of a resolution authorizing tax exempt status for the Virginia Institute of Autism, which is Resolution R082823-05. Mr. Skelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our office did receive a request from the Virginia Institute for Autism for tax exempt status regarding their facility at 1035 Avalon Drive in Forest. The property is roughly $1.8 million, recently assessed, and the tax revenue received off of that is about $7,600, $7,700. That is a permissible use where the facility is. They did receive site plan approval last year to have a private day school use, and their administrative uses in that building. We do have a representative from the Institute here who can perhaps answer more detailed questions should the board have as far as what their services are rendered to the county. And they do receive some funding from the county for those private day placements, but that's kind of the case with all of our institutes of that nature. So happy to answer any questions that I'm able to answer from the board. Otherwise, I believe they would like to be heard.
Okay. Any questions for staff?
I looked up the address, and you just mentioned the Avalon address. What on the application had another address? Why was there two different addresses?
There was a bit of a glitch in GIS for a number of years. When the application came in, it was an Elkton Farm Drive address, but it is correctly, and it was advertised in the newspaper for the Avalon Drive, which is the correct address. So we did attempt to change that in the agenda item beforehand. Apparently that correction did not get saved, so.
Okay. Would the applicant like to share anything?
So I'm very happy to answer any questions you may have. My name is Damien Murtaugh, and I run that school in Forest. We serve children aged 2 to 22 with the most severe kinds of autism. So our primary mission is to minimize the impact of their disability on their families and across their lifespan. So our idea is by giving them intensive therapeutic evidence-based services from an early age, we can ultimately save costs for taxpayers across the lifespan by doing things like keeping them away from residential facilities or institutions of that nature, by targeting their educational plans pretty intensively. Our school goes year-round, so our students don't take a break for the summertime or anything like that. And we also offer an adult day support program. So after students graduate, many of them then participate there, which is a way for them to also access their public community. Similarly, those are the programs that help keep them out of more intensive settings. I'm not sure if there's any other specific questions, but I'd be glad to answer anything you might have.
One of the questions that was asked just when we decide on which ones to give was whether officers, what they get paid, right? And you said that since it's a 501c3, you don't have to answer that question?
It wasn't so much that we didn't have to answer the question as we had been informed that it was probably less of a factor because we were a nonprofit. The answer we gave, I think, when we submitted the paperwork was we were happy to provide more details, but we were still awaiting clarification. I can't remember the name of the person who kind of mentioned to us, but it was basically said, well, you guys are a 501c3, so you're not really paying big people big salaries. You know, in my field, for example, my role as a behavior analyst and as a director, I've been offered different jobs for a lot more money from different companies in the area. So competitively, we're probably a little bit below what our market rate would be for our salaries and folks already. The staff who are there, including myself, are very much based on the mission for how we can serve our students.
Anybody there make over $100,000?
Absolutely not, no.
How many children do y'all?
We currently have 22 students on our roster. The Department of Education has set an upper limit of 39 for how many can occupy the space based on its actual square footage. The reason why we have that discrepancy is actually finding staff who are willing to do the work, because it's a pretty intensive, long day. Many of our students, as I say, are on the most severe end of the spectrum, so they need help in the bathroom. We spend a lot of time teaching communication and language and daily living skills. Sometimes there's a lot of physical aggression. So one of our biggest challenges is actually finding a way to recruit staff who are willing to work for the salaries we're able to pay as a nonprofit in order to meet those needs. We have a wait list that grows pretty regularly, and it's mostly due to how well we are able to do the work, as well as the ever-increasing need for students with autism. The birth rate now is 1 in 36, and so the harvest is plenty, but the farmers are few. You know.
How many students do you have from Bedford County?
Currently, we have 5. We have a number of Bedford County students on our wait list. So out of that, we serve students from as far south as Halifax to Nelson, Botetourt over to Appomattox, and we are actually starting with a student who is currently residing in Pittsylvania County next week. And we have 4 locations across the state. So across all 4 of our locations, we serve 35 different counties from the state, but the Lynchburg location has those 7 or 8.
And the funds used for the Bedford County students, does that flow through to your organization through the CASA to what branch?
Primarily through the CSA committees. So most time when a special education director or department make a decision that a student needs a school like ours, they work with the CSAs to help secure funding.
How much does it charge, do taxpayers pay a day to have a student there?
It is just about $400 a day per student when we go year round.
How about if it doesn't come from the taxpayers, it doesn't come from, it was a private person wanted to send a child there, what do they spend?
Well, it all depends. So about 10% of our revenue comes from donations and grant raising and funds like that. There are also very few families are able to afford it just because of the cost, because of the intensive nature of what we do with our students. As I say, they have a very significant level of need. They're all taught one-on-one, and every one of them is learning a completely different set of skills than any other student because of how severe their needs are. So that intensive one-on-one has to be, trained, supported, and everything else. So yeah, that's where because the tuition rate is. It's pretty high, and it's not really, to be honest, attainable for a family to be able to afford it independently. And it's mostly because of that intensive nature and the amount of training that goes into training the staff and keeping them.
Building, when I looked it up, it's like a $1.8 million building.
Originally, yes.
So before, I know, I've heard that you worked or you're part of your organization, like worked in churches and that sort of thing.
Yes, that's how we started.
Yeah. So could those costs have been lowered if you had stayed in some free buildings?
Yes and no. So a few of the things are about 85% of our operating budget goes to salaries. So so much of what it costs us to run our operation actually goes right back out the door to staff, from salaries to insurance and things like that. So any kind of other operating costs are what are left over in that other 15-20%. We have always run into limitations with the organizations we have paired with. So when we first opened 12 years ago, we were at Timberlake Christian Church off of 460 across from the 7-Eleven. And that day was me and 2 staff and 2 students. And we were just at a small church basement. We would have to pack up the entire school on Friday night and then unpack it out of the closets on Monday mornings. From there, we moved and released some space on the campus at Humankind in Boonesboro, and we're growing, and that's where some of our, similarly, we were outgrowing that space, and we were getting ready to purchase our own building at the start of the pandemic, and a whole lot of funding things became more stressful. You know, none of us knew what was happening at the very beginning of it. We were actually supposed to be moving in late March 2020. We pivoted from purchasing a building and returned to a church and went to Highland Heights Baptist Church in Campbell County. And we were the first school in the state to open again to in-person services. We were back with students in person in June 2020 because our students' impairments are so significant. Virtual learning isn't really an option. The person on the screen doesn't normally make our students learn and answer, and our students aren't really capable of learning that way. So we went back to in-person learning there very, very quickly based on those needs. And similarly, we were back to packing up on Friday afternoon, unpacking on Monday, packing up again on Wednesday for Awanas, unpacking on Thursday. So it causes a lot of disruption to everything our students have to learn whenever you have to literally take to school and put it in the closet for the night and then bring it back out again.
How many students did you have in Campbell County, Highland Heights?
We were up to we got up to 19 there, and at our peak enrollment here in Bedford, we had 25. 3 graduated this year and are now participating in community settings. 1 now has a part-time job, and then 1 left the state and another 1 transferred to a different school because it was closer to where he's originally from. So our highest enrollment's ever gotten is 25, but in Campbell we were at 19 or 20 students.
So when you're at 25, is that, and that's funded at $400 a day?
Yes.
So if we tell, the 8,000 that would normally go to taxpayers from this organization, is there any way that Bedford students could get to the top of the, like you said, you had some like on waiting lists, that Bedford students would be priority since Bedford taxpayers, or if they would give the tax benefit?
Sure, that's definitely an option we can look into for sure. One of the difficulties becomes being able to tell one family over another who might have been on our wait list for longer. If a Bedford County student comes up, you have to wait a little bit longer. But there's no reason why we can't look into that. We'd be very happy to do it. Some of the other ways that I think we contribute financially to the county includes the staff we do bring in. Most of them are Liberty University graduates. It's their first job out of college. They might otherwise be leaving the area, heading back home to the different various states or different parts of the state that they're from. Many of them then take up residence in Bedford County. So we have a staff, there's 36 people on staff right now. 75 to 80% of them are Bedford County residents now. I don't know how many of them would be if they hadn't found a job in this field that they're studying. So most of them are coming out of college with bachelor's degrees in psychology. And the way we offer our services in that very intensive way is related to both special education and psychology. So I think one of the ways that we are financially benefiting the taxpayer is by bringing more people in. I recognize that 36 people isn't a huge amount, and I don't understand taxes enough to be able to say that takes that 7,000 or 8,000 off the books. But I do think we keep a lot more people in the county, and also even in those levels of expertise. For example, both myself or some of the other more senior staff whose jobs are present in actually deciding how to help these children, and who are coming up with the ideas and working with the parents. I don't think that level of expertise will be staying in the area either, for those same reasons. As autism numbers continue to increase, there's a lot of competition for well-trained, competent, experienced people in the field, and some of them might end up leaving the area otherwise. So to answer your question kind of straight, yes, I think we can look into it, but I think the difficulty would be, do we end up basically conflicting with our mission to serve the needs of those individuals as they come in, or as they come onto our wait list? But I'm very open to be able to looking into that at your request, for sure.
Okay.
I wonder, Mr. Chairman, if we're setting a precedence here that might come back and get us. We're talking about 87 cents a day is what we're asking in taxes per student, and they're getting $400 a day. against offering a tax break. I do worry about, are we setting a precedence that we have to live with and honor in other places that maybe we're not as willing to do?
A time for discussion after the public hearing, but yeah. Any other questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. I don't have anyone that has signed up for this public hearing, but the floor is open for that time if there is somebody who'd like to speak for or against this application. Do not see anybody, so I will close the citizen comment portion and open it up to discussion on the board now.
I gotta say that Supervisor Johnson makes a good point. I think that I'm aware of people, as I'm sure all of us on this board are aware of folks, families that have a family member with autism. And I'm certainly, I have a soft place in my heart for them because although I've never had to deal with that before with a family member, I know folks, intimately acquainted with folks that do. You know, we're very blessed when we have children who are completely healthy and able to grow up in normal. And the cost for taking care of these kids, especially some of them, can be extremely violent and difficult to handle, especially as they get older. And I don't have the answer for this. I'd like to ask, so what is the annual tax revenue generated to the county for this property now?
Well,
$7,675.
I mean, how do we, as Mr. Johnson suggested, how do we justify this if we approve it? But yet, how can you not hold out some concern over not approving it?
I think in the last one that I recall that we did approve, the benefit had to outweigh the loss in revenue. And in that particular case, I know that there were several disadvantaged children that were scholarshiped into different programs and so forth. And that was far greater than, I believe that case, it was only about $1,200 in annual taxes. So for me, personally, you know, as long as the impact to our local families is greater than $7,675, I'm okay with it, personally.
So moving them up on the list would be a way that they could impact positively to Bedford County, since it's Bedford County taxpayers who are going to help cover this taxes.
That would be something I would look at very favorably myself.
Mr. Chairman, I'm for giving the tax break. I just want us to be cognizant of the precedent we set moving forward with someone else that may come up next month and want a tax break.
I think in the other, there's eight criteria, I guess, that are listed out there. It appears to meet at least 7 of them. I don't know how you quantify that other piece currently, but with your suggestion, certainly that would alleviate that concern for me.
I think that helping these kids outweigh priority. And I don't know how many of these workers or whoever, I don't think none of us know, live in the counties, but certainly they probably spend money in the county and they're around and everything. But I personally, I think that the concern of all kids, and I understand the priority of Bedford County, but they do meet pretty much all the the bullet points that we pointed out, so I would be in favor of it.
Mr. Chair. Yes. Charlotte did ask the question. I got an answer. We got an answer, but I want to just make sure there is no one in the organization that has a salary that's six figures,
Correct.
including yourself.
Including myself, yes. In our Lynchburg location, there's no one. I cannot speak to salaries for anyone beyond that, but in my time, I've worked for the organization for 12 years. I've no working, and I'm mid to top level management. In my 12 years there, I'm completely unaware of anyone making six figures.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
or were you done, Mr. Sharp?
Yes.
If we're gonna, I mean, and I'm not opposed to this, I wanna make it clear, but I'm gonna say, follow my thinking here. $7,000 is a very small price to pay when you look at the cost per day per student. It's almost insignificant in what it goes to do for this organization. But on the other hand, if I may be as bold to make a suggestion here, Bedford County taxpayers pay enormous amounts of money in taxes, and we as a Board of Supervisors are only able to tell our school board how much they can have. And if they want to spend $5 or $6 million on 40 awnings at one high school, which equates to more than $100,000 per awning, just do you follow me here? I'm
Oh, yeah, you're just saying this is small potatoes in comparison to.
And certainly, I can't imagine anybody in the county who could argue with this, and I feel like we should certainly go ahead probably and approve this if we're gonna be party to something that's spending such an egregious amount of money on something such as awnings at a high school that could easily be done for $5,000 to $7,000 a piece as opposed to more than $100,000 each.
I will add that I visited this facility today on my lunch break. It's in my district, and the last time I was there, there was a radio station there, and I think a number of different businesses were located in there. So I was curious whether the entire facility was being used for this purpose, or was only part of the facility being used for that purpose. You know, what I observed was that the entire facility is used for this purpose. They've put a playground, you know, outside for, I guess, the younger kids. And it's been completely transformed from the last time that I had been in the facility. But that gave me some peace that this seems to be an operation that hopefully is here to stay, to serve the community. And it looks like the entire facility is being used for that. Now, I would only have, you know, this follows this organization, but is it tied? Now, this is a question for our parliamentarian. Is it tied to just this property, or is it, and it's tied to this property for this organization?
It's tied to this property for this organization, and it has to be continued to be used to enjoy the benefit of that tax exemption for the autism purpose. So if they switch uses to something else, the tax exemption goes away.
Or if they sold the property, or
You'd need a new
or if they
application for
wanted
a
to
new
do another facility, then that would be a completely different.
Completely different animal.
Okay. All right, then with those clarifications, unless there's other questions, and since it's in my district, I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution R 082823-05.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
would you, could we entertain perhaps an amendment to add that they bring Bedford County children to the top of the list? Considering the criteria number 7, which says the revenue impact of the locality and its taxpayers of exempting the property. So making sure that Bedford County, since the taxpayers of Bedford County are the ones who are footing this bill, that those children get to the top of the list.
But the consensus of the board?
Sure, Ms. Bansley, I mean, children in general, my feeling is I think that's a great idea, but children in general who have autism should not be denied if there's not a, certainly if there's not a Bedford County resident, you know, able to come up there. I mean,
And if,
if I may suggest, I'm not denying your move. I'd like to also suggest that perhaps one of our board members, perhaps, would be permitted to sit on any board meetings that you folks have to stay informed on how the organization is moving forward.
and if I may just may interject, I think by code, you can't condition the tax exemption on anything. You can strongly recommend that, you know, they make Bedford County students a priority, but I don't think you can actually make that part of the ordinance.
And I'm just going to leave my motion as.
So we have a motion for Mr. Sharp. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Parker. This would be a roll call vote. So Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Ms. Parker?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. Bansley?
Yes.
Mr. Sharp?
Yes.
Chair votes yes, motion passes. That brings us to our next public hearing, which is consideration of a resolution authorizing staff to commence the Valleywood Drive Revenue Sharing Project, which is Resolution R 082823-06. Mr. Smedley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. VDOT is scheduled to repave Valleywood Drive this fall to bring the road into the state system as part of the revenue sharing program. As you all may recall, the revenue sharing program dictates a 50-50 cost split between VDOT and the landowners. The landowner's portion of that cost share would flow through Bedford County, and so Bedford County is involved during that process. Back in 2016, when this project was initiated, a 75% participation commitment was required for this project. We're having a public hearing here tonight because since 2016, over half of the associated homes have been sold on Valleywood Drive and changed hands. So county staff has been working to secure updated declarations from the new homeowners out there on Valleywood Drive, and I'm happy to report that we have received over 75% commitments from the new homeowners prior to this meeting. So with that being said, I would humbly request that the board consider the option number 1 resolution that was outlined in the meeting packets to proceed with authorization of payment for this project and continue with the construction here this fall. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions or discuss the project and any more details.
Any questions?
Thank you for your work. It's a long time coming. Kudos.
Yep.
I was thinking about opening a front-end alignment shop right up.
That was more like a body shop.
Any other questions? Thank you.
All right, thank you.
So we'll open up the citizen comment portion. I don't have anyone that's signed up for this, but if you would like to speak on it, now's your chance. Seeing none, I will close the citizen comment portion and open it up to the board for discussion.
Charlotte, it's your district.
For district.
If there's no discussion, I would like to move that we approve resolution R 082823-06.
And I'll second. I've been waiting for this one forever. So, yes.
We have a motion from Ms. Bansley, seconded by Mr. Sharp. This is a roll call vote. Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. Bansley?
Yes.
Mr. Sharp?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Finally, yes.
And Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Ms. Parker?
Yes.
Chair votes yes, motion passes. That leads us to our last public hearing, which is consideration of a resolution approving special use permit SU 23-0007 on behalf of James Andrews, which is resolution 082-823-13. Ms. Currington.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening. My name is Abigail Currington. I'm with the Division of Planning, and I will be presenting the special use application SU 23-0007. The applicant and property owner is James W. Andrews. The subject parcel is RPC number 9306000, located at 2907 Big Island Highway, Bedford, Virginia 24523. The parcel is 6.61 acres. The parcel is currently zoned as AR with a corridor overlay. The proposed use is a commercial indoor amusement use, and they are located in election district number 7. The location map shows the parcel outlined in blue and its relation to other county roads. The parcel is located on Big Island Highway, Route 122. The zoning map shows the parcel's current zoning designation as AR with the corridor overlay. The immediate surrounding zoning also includes AR both with and without the corridor overlay. Please note that in the corridor overlay, commercial uses listed in the permitted use table may be permitted after approval of a special use permit when the underlying zoning district does not permit the use. The future land use map identifies the subject parcel and all surrounding properties as agricultural natural resource stewardship. The aerial photograph from 2022 shows the parcel is developed with an existing structure, which is Arrington's Grocery and Tire Shop. This is the concept plan submitted by the applicant. If the special use gets approved, they will need to submit a major site plan for the establishment of the commercial indoor amusement use to check compliance with the zoning ordinance, as well as requirements for the reviewing agencies. They have proposed to replace the existing 3,000 square foot tire shop with an arcade. The property is served by private utilities. VDOT will require an access management exception to be submitted by an engineer that addresses the current state of the entrances and the exception they wish to be granted. It would need to highlight that the easterly entrance is a shared use entrance for 2 additional properties. A land disturbing permit will be needed if 10,000 square feet or greater is disturbed and or within 200 feet of a body of water, but is not anticipated with the request as submitted. The Planning Commission public hearing was held on August 1st, 2023. No citizens spoke for or against the application during the public hearing. The Planning Commission voted 7-0 to recommend approval of the application with staff condition. The Planning Commission has recommended the following condition. 1, general conformance with the concept plan and conformance with all ordinance standard is required for site plan approval. Any changes to the layout of the site that will result in an increased impact to adjoining properties or uses shall require approval of an amended special use permit. And staff has added a condition, a recommended condition. Gambling or skill games as defined in Code of Virginia 18.2-325 shall be prohibited. And this concludes the staff presentation. Any questions from the planning perspective?
Any questions? Yes.
Question, why would you recommend the skill games be prohibited when they're allowed at convenience stores?
So the use for commercial indoor amusement would allow for skill games. We are asking specifically in this case to not allow them. So it is not a standalone use to have skill games. They have to be in conjunction with something, so that's why you see them in gas stations.
I'm just not that smart, I don't understand. That you would allow it to be in a gas station, but you wouldn't allow it to be in an amusement center. I don't get the rationale.
You couldn't have a standalone skill game as defined, which is gambling. There's an exception in that code for what has been considered non-gambling. So I think the concern was you didn't want a skill game parlor out there versus the amusement center as it's contemplated.
But what are those other, isn't there some around?
Yeah, and they're being used by the.
No, I'm talking about, but isn't there one that's specifically just one of those places though? Is it Rosie's or something? Like, I don't know.
That's
I
a
don't know
casino, so that'd be a
Well,
different
no,
use.
no,
But
there-
there's also one out on,
No, I thought the only casinos were like Bristol and Danville.
There's skill games at the Thaxton Market and gambling.
Well,
What is Rosie's?
It's a casino.
That's a casino.
It is?
Mhm.
It's off track, man. I don't know where that is, but
Then,
Benton? Okay.
Well, there, and I don't know about Bedford County, but I know on Bramilton Avenue in Roanoke, there's a building that's dedicated to nothing but skill games.
and the code is really funny about how they define what a skill game is. The code section that's citing this is just the ones that are actually for gambling. There's a difference for skill games that are, as the General Assembly has figured, purely skill games.
Yeah, pool is like a skill game. Pool is, the ones that we're talking about, like video poker, where you're getting money for winning games.
Yeah,
Well,
no,
yeah,
it can't be
no,
gambling. We get that, but I still don't understand what, it seems like it's a weird definition.
General Assembly for that, but there are skill games you can actually win money back, which is gambling, and there are skill games where you don't. It's
Well,
actually-
at the convenience stores like at Thaxton Market, Bob's Supervisor Davis talking about, they get money back. I hope those people aren't putting all that money in those machines, no chance of getting them back.
Well,
If they do, I'll go buy a machine to put it up.
I don't make a habit of frequenting or playing. In fact, I don't do it at all, but I've heard that there are actually folks who know how to play those games and swindle money out of them from some of the employees. Is it fair to ask the applicant what he wants there?
He's gonna talk here in just a second. If you're done with staff, then I'll let the applicant come and talk.
Thank you.
All right, wait, we're not done with staff.
We're in trouble now.
So in Virginia right now, so to answer your question, so can you have them in a gas station? It's very clear in the code that you can have them as an accessory use in a gas station as long as it's not the primary use. The difference is that it's being litigated in Virginia right now because there's, General Assembly's outlawed them as a standalone facility. So like you can't just have that could be the sole thing that you're doing there. So it's being litigated right now, so we don't really know how the legalities, if that will prevail or not. So you can have them in a gas station. There's a standalone facility, I think, in Lynchburg line, if you go towards 221, supposedly, that's unpermitted, that Lynchburg's trying to get rid of right now. So it's just being litigated. Like Patrick said, it's kind of, is it a casino or is it not? That's what it boils down to. So we're just trying to preclude the kind where you would get money from. But we don't want to preclude Mr. Andrews from having pool, foosball, air hockey. Those are skill games too in their own set, but they're not a gambling skill game where you get a profit or money or there's a reward at the end if you win.
Does that mean that all those years at Six Seas Entertainment Center down there that I lost my allowance every single week, I can go back and get it back?
Can't answer that question for you. I think when we put this condition out there, we asked Mr. Andrews this morning, what he wanted to have, and the things he wanted to have still will be allowed there. We're just precluding the ability for someone to have like a game in there where you would literally get money for winning it.
Slot machine.
Yeah. It's
So if he made it a public snack bar, you could come in, buy drinks, potato chips, abs, and it was public, where anybody could just stop in and go in and get them a drink.
It's an ancillary use. I mean, just like you can buy a lottery ticket at most of your grocery stores and gas stations, yes.
So he could then let it be gambling going on.
Right. Happens at most of your gas stations now.
All right, anything else for staff? All right, Mr. Lawhorn.
Good evening. How you doing? I'm D.W. Lawhorn, and I am working with Jimmy to do this. And what we're looking to have is a family place to go, retro arcade, pinball machines, skee ball, Pac-Man, Galaga, Donkey Kong, all the normal things you used to see when you was growing up. We're not looking to have gambling, paying out any money. Pool table, yeah, we won't have a pool table to start off with, but we plan on rotating stuff. So people say, hey, I'd like to see a pool table here. We might put one in there for 6 months. If somebody asks for a different style machine, we might try to go find one of those and put it in there so it's not all the same stuff. But he's got the store next door, so we think it'll complement that. If they want to go over and get a drink, he's got the restaurant in there. They can go in and get food. He got tables inside, outside. If they want to take a break and go eat, go over and get a drink, they'll do that over on there at the store. What we're going to have is arcade is just the arcade and the ability to come in and play games with your family and have a good time. That's what we want.
Somebody must already have a collection of games.
Yeah, we already have a bunch. ready to go if this is able to happen.
Are you buying these games, or are you gonna lease them?
Buy them. We have already, but this has been like a year-long journey, to be honest with you. We started out, it was a passion of mine. I write children's books. I love kids. I want to see stuff to do. We had another location picked out that did not work out. Just want something fun for people to go with their family and have a good time. We're not going to stay up late at night because, kids got to go home from school and go to bed. We're not going to do that, so.
I'm kind of surprised that this is still, like, we did it, right, when we were kids, but
Yeah.
now they all have all their computers on their phones and at homes, they're all by themselves, right? So I'm kind of excited to see that.
Probably gonna be
it's more
people like
social.
us that are being nostalgic. That's what it's gonna be. It's not gonna be.
I guarantee you,
Not gonna be
Mariners
young.
Landing has a game room over there, and there's nobody under 50 that goes in it.
And one thing about ours, all the games will be turned on to free play. So you just pay an admission price to come in and go, because, if you go somewhere and $20 a quarter, you're done in an hour,
Yeah.
We don't want that. We want you to be there and have a good time with your family. So we're just gonna have everything turned on. You come in and pay a small fee and play. till
No,
you're
but
done
I
playing.
remember when you had to put your quarter up there. Like, that's my quarter,
Yeah.
when you're done with yours.
That's right.
Move along so I can
That's
play.
right.
Yep. The only thing we talked about having that wouldn't be an arcade was think about putting Steve Rush at the door of the table. If you make him smile, you get free admission.
Have you considered a Dunkin' booth?
Yes.
With used recycled motor oil?
Yes.
Yeah.
Any other questions for the applicant? All right, thanks, sir.
Okay.
All right, this also has a citizen comment portion of this evening. I don't have anyone signed up, but if you want to inform them what games you would come play and what you wouldn't play, I'm sure they'd take those suggestions. All right, I don't see anybody moving, so I'll close the citizen comment portion and open it up to the board.
I'd just like to commend them for doing this and trying to get something wholesome for the children to do, to give them an alternative that's not bad and not related to a cell phone or online internet access.
All right,
No other comments? I'll just make a comment. I wish we had this when I was at Liberty High School, because I know where I would have been. But if there's no other comments, I'll make a motion to approve Resolution R082823-13.
okay, we have a motion by Ms. Parker. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Davis. This is a roll call. Mr. Davis.
Yes.
Mr. Scott.
Yes.
Ms. Parker.
Yes.
Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
Ms. Bansley.
Yes.
Mr. Sharp.
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Motion passes. All right, that moves us on down to our action and discussion items. First thing up is Resolution R082823-07, which is a resolution approving fiscal year 2023 year-end budget adjustments. Ms. Anderson.
Good evening. Before you is a request to approve the year-end budget adjustments for the prior fiscal year, which ended June 30th. This is something that we do every year, and this year's request is very similar to what we have requested in prior years. It consists of a combination of departmental transfers, supplemental appropriations, and use of contingency funds. The agenda memo does provide more specifics regarding each individual request, but at a high level, the majority of the departmental transfers and uses of contingency funds were related to unanticipated or higher than anticipated costs due to inflation or the timing of payments. I did want to specifically point out the use of contingency funds for the Blue Ridge Regional Jail. That budget overage was due to a true-up payment that was made in fiscal year 23 related to fiscal year 22 actual costs. The true-up payment, it was made in January and was about $536,000. The good news is that they have adjusted per diem rates, and I do not anticipate that we will have that large of a true-up payment this year. In fact, as of the early spring, we were actually operating in a bit of a surplus. So if that is how we finish the year, then we would actually get a bit of a refund in fiscal year 24 related to fiscal year 23. In addition to the departmental transfers and uses of contingency, there are also several requests for supplemental appropriations. Most of these requests are due to additional revenues received during the year, which must be used for a specific purpose. But we generally don't know the amounts that will be received or needed during the year when we're doing the budget process, so we appropriate through this year-end process. I do want to point out a couple of exceptions. The management fee related to EMS revenue collections, that's a percentage of collections. So as revenues go up, so does that management fee. Revenues came in about $300,000 more than anticipated this year, so the request is to appropriate a portion of those additional revenues to offset the increase in the management fee. And then we kind of touched on this during the work session tonight, but the broadband manager position, as I mentioned, we are funding that from ARPA funds, so we wait till the end of the year to see the final costs of that position. That is all inclusive of salaries and all benefits. So we are requesting a supplemental appropriation from the remaining ARPA funds to cover the cost of that position. In total, the supplemental appropriations requested will increase the general fund budget by about $229,000, which is less than 0.5% of the total budget. Are there any questions?
Any questions?
The broadband management position,
Yes.
what's the job description?
I would have to let Robert probably address more specifically what that position handles, but as a whole, they manage the broadband projects, both with Milestone Towers. I know the management of that. Robert, could you speak a little more specifically?
Yeah, and that's the position that Mr. Putney fills, but yeah, I mean, he works with the state, he works with all the ISPs, he fields a number of phone calls from citizens on a daily basis. What Ms. Anderson said, those duties. Also, every now and then, we will have them do a few other projects as assigned.
Wasn't that what John does?
Yes,
It is.
that is
It
his
is
job.
him.
That is
Oh, I
his-
thought you was hiring somebody new.
No.
Sorry about that.
Sounds like Mr. Putney's overpaid to me.
I was getting ready to say, I thought he was doing a real good job.
Any other questions? All right, thank you. All right, any discussion from the board on this resolution? Not, I'd entertain a motion.
I would suggest that we, I've lost the resolution, Mr. Chair, but I move that we approve resolution R082823808.
07.
07, thank you.
We have a motion by Mr. Davis. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Scott. This is a roll call. Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Ms. Parker?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. Bansley?
Yes.
Mr. Sharp?
Yes.
Chair votes yes, motion passes. That moves us on to a consideration of a resolution authorizing fiscal year 2022, 2023 reappropriations, which is Resolution R 082823-08. Ms. Anderson.
Okay, so this is another thing that we do typically each year. We are requesting the reappropriation of funds from the fiscal year 23 to the fiscal year 24 budget. As a reminder, the current policy does state that funds can be reappropriated if they were included in the prior year's budget, but either not ordered or not paid prior to the year end for some reason. It could be timing, it could be delays in procurement, and anything that might delay that purchase. The board can and has previously approved requests that fall outside of those parameters, but we do try to limit such approvals to those requests that really cannot be absorbed within the current year's budget and that also can't wait until the next budget cycle. In total, we received 19 reappropriation requests totaling about $318,000. We reviewed all requests and are recommending 13 for approval for a total of about $194,000 or 0.16% increase in the current year's general fund budget. The majority of the requests that we are recommending fall within the parameters of the reappropriation policy. There is, however, one request that is recommended that did not technically meet the definition of a reappropriation, and that was for office furniture for the registrar's office. The amount of that request is pretty minimal, but as you'll recall, a new deputy registrar position was approved in the fiscal year 24 budget. At the time that that request was submitted, we had not made the decision to relocate the registrar's office, so there was not a need for additional furniture related to that position. And so the request is to reappropriate money to cover the new furniture that is now needed for that. Of the 6 requests that staff is not recommending, 5 of those actually did not meet the definition of a reappropriation, and we do believe that they can be absorbed within the existing budget if they cannot wait until the next budget cycle. 1 request that was not recommended did technically meet the definition of a reappropriation, but the dollar amount was so minimal, we felt that it could be absorbed within the current year's budget. Are there any questions?
Any questions? Okay. Any discussion on this particular resolution? Okay. Would entertain a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution R-082823-08.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Sharp. Is there a second? Second by Ms. Parker. This is a roll call. Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. Bansley?
Yes.
Mr. Sharp?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Ms. Parker?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Motion passes. This brings us to consideration of a resolution authorizing the appropriation of Virginia Department of Fire Programs aid to localities funds for the Department of Fire and Rescue. Resolution R-082823-09. Chief Altman.
Good evening. This is a request to use the aid to localities pass-through funds from the Virginia Department of Fire Programs to purchase ballistic gear for active threat for the career staff personnel at this point. It is a reappropriation of the aid to localities fundings didn't get spent last year due to some different things going on with MOUs and all. So we identified this money for this project.
Any questions for Deputy Chief?
What's the description of the ballistic gear or its use?
It's for active threat or violence calls. It is a vest and a helmet, but the vest is mostly for any violence calls that the staff go out on, assaults, shootings, stabbings, whatever the case may be. They would vest up before they go out for their protection, and also for the active threat, school shootings, any mass violence like that. So it's for any purpose of mass violence or violence on specific calls.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank y'all.
Any discussion or further questions from the board?
I'm satisfied.
Would entertain a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve Resolution R-082823-09.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion from Mr. Sharp, seconded by Ms. Bansley. This is a roll call. Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. Bansley?
Yes.
Mr. Sharp?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Ms. Parker?
Yes.
Chair votes yes, motion passes. Brings us to consideration of a resolution authorizing county staff to enter into an access agreement for F&B Contractors Limited to access property to the east of the Montvale Collection Center. And I think that's Manita, actually, isn't it? It's not Montvale.
Yes, it is Medina.
Okay.
My apologies.
That would be to the Manita Collection
Yes.
Center. Resolution R-082823-10. Mr. Coffin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ladies and gentlemen, for your consideration tonight, asking county staff to have authorization to enter into an access agreement for F&B properties. We included a little site plan with it. They currently have an access agreement for the left-hand side of that driveway. They have a lay-down yard there and store some equipment there. They maintain the road, they mow, they do snow removal up to the current gate. This access agreement would necessitate moving the gate back further, closer to the actual cans at the end of the road, which they would do entirely at their expense. And then they would maintain that road and mow and do snow removal for that if we allow such access.
All right, any questions for Mr. Kaufman? Yep. All right, any discussion from the board on that? Sounds like a pretty good deal to me. Note, if there are no questions or discussion, I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to approve resolution R082823-10.
Okay, do we have a second? Second by Mr. Sharp. So motion by Ms. Parker, second by Mr. Sharp. Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Scott? Ms. Parker? Mr. Johnson? Ms. Bansley? Mr. Sharp? Chair votes yes, motion passes. Brings us on to consideration of a resolution authorizing the execution of a contract with the Virginia Department of Housing and Community Development for Verizon Sweets Valley and Big Island Broadband Project, Resolution R 082823-11. Mr. Smedley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So back in March, Bedford County executed a contract with Verizon for a broadband project in Big Island and Wheats Valley. This project fulfills outstanding VATI grant application obligations from back in 2019 and would allow Bedford County to seek reimbursement for approximately $883,000 in state funds. The request before you is to enter a contract with DHCD to assign that $883,000 fund balance to the Verizon project and process reimbursements accordingly. So the Verizon project is well underway. They plan to come to one of the October board meetings and provide an update for the board. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Eric?
Said we'll seek the reimbursement. Is that a given?
Yes, as long as Verizon fulfills their contractual requirements, and we have no reason to believe they won't, that $883,000 should be absolutely a given, yes. This contract basically mimics our 2022 VATI contracts. We have already been actively applying for reimbursements on those contracts and receiving those from DHCD.
Any other questions for Eric? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Anybody want to make a motion to get a little money?
I'll make a motion.
I thought you would.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion we accept resolution or pass resolution R082823-11.
We have a motion by Mr. Scott. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Davis. Mr. Davis.
Yes.
Mr. Scott.
Yes.
Ms. Parker.
Yes.
Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
Ms. Bansley.
Yes.
Mr. Sharp. Chair votes yes, motion passes. I realize we have so much on this agenda. Next up is consideration of a resolution authorizing the purchase of an IT firewall replacement. Resolution R 082823-12. Ms. Lowe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The proposed agenda item is to authorize the purchase of the IT firewall replacement. The county's IT firewall needs to be updated and replaced based on an increased network traffic and increased need for circuit capacity. The firewall is a critical IT infrastructure for the cybersecurity protection of the county data, systems, and staff. Its main purpose is to allow non-threatening traffic in and to keep out the dangerous traffic out. Our current firewall is at the limit of keeping up with the incoming and outgoing network traffic. Unlike our current firewall, the proposed solution includes a centralized management that offers a single pane of glass to gain insight into the network-wide traffic and threats. The proposed vendor, SHI, is under the state contract and priced through cooperative procurement. This agreement includes hardware, software, 3 years of 4-hour premium support and maintenance. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Ms. Lowe? Thank you.
I have a question.
Okay.
I know that Tyler Munis has nothing to do with the firewall, but just citing that as an example of a bad experience for us in a lot of areas and high cost and nothing in return, or what you said we're going to get service for this?
4-hour premium software support, yes.
And what's the cost of this?
The cost of this is a total of $91,849.78. The appropriation of $80,702 was included in the fiscal year 2024 general fund CIP. We are asking for additional $11,147 to complete this project, and this is being transferred into the IT operating budget. The reason for this increase is that this is now August. The licensing has changed, so those prices have updated. We're also including the single pane of glass that I was talking about, that centralized management software. There's a support that's associated with that. This particular product is actually what Gartner would call in the Magic Quadrant. It is very well-known and well-respected. The 4-hour support includes if there was any issue with that device, that firewall, they have a 4-hour turnaround to ship us a new one that's working.
For a minute, you had me thinking we only had 4 hours of help on that, but I got that now.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on this resolution? Entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I would move that we approve resolution 082823-12.
We have a motion by Mr. Davis. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Scott. This is a roll call. Mr. Davis.
Yes.
Mr. Scott.
Yes.
Ms. Parker.
Yes.
Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
Ms. Bansley.
Yes.
Mr. Sharp.
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Brings us to committee reports, which we don't have any for this evening. And on to board comments. Is there anyone that wishes to share? All right. Mr. Hiss, do you have anything that you'd like to share?
I'll just repeat for the public consumption, and in case the board didn't know about some things that are, a couple of things our PIO, Shelley Basinger, put out there last few days. The registrar's office is open in its new location. So anyway, on Turning Point Road, so they, Ms. Gunter and her staff are there doing their job. So anyways, they seem to be happy, and it's going to be a good office for them. So anyways, that is open and ready to go. Also, just because it's a public issue as well, the Boonesboro Collection Center will be closed tomorrow through Friday for asphalting that property. So that'll be a much desired improvement to that convenience center. So that's all I had.
Okay.
Would it be appropriate for me just to bring up one point? You mentioned asphalting Boonesboro. How's Montvale? Mr. Kaufman stepped out asphalt.
Yeah, I think Mr. Davis, I believe it's in this CIP, but I don't think it's in this year's. It might. I'll have to get back with you about which year it's budgeted. But
Well, now I know where I can open my front-end alignment shop.
That's right. That's right.
Mr. Skelly, do you have anything else?
No report at this time, Mr. Chair.
All right. You should have BRWA minutes in your packet. Mr. Hiss, any upcoming meeting information? I know our September 11th work session will be around the landfill.
It will. We had a preliminary meeting this afternoon to meet with consultants and engineers to talk about what they're going to be talking about. So, yeah, they'll be ready to discuss on the 11th.
All right.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
make a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Scott, if the time had changed, we're just at 7:15. That's a new record.
No. I watch the clock because I'm going to drag it on when you get to that point.
So we have a motion from Mr. Scott to adjourn. Is there a second? Second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
All opposed? Aye.
Want to stay?
Hey, Bob,
Yeah.
explain to me again, where is this on their website?
No, it's not on Lynchburg Regional.